The machine beeped in the empty break room as my employee ID card swiped the reader by the door. The walk to my car felt long. The restaurant where I worked was perched right on the beach, almost like it was floating above the water. Barely 200 feet of coastline separated the mangroves from the Atlantic Ocean, maybe even less. Because of this, parking close wasn't an option. The beachside spots were all paid parking, so I had to leave my car farther away. As always, I meandered through the softly lit streets of the quiet beach town, crossing silent roads to reach my Toyota Camry. But don't let the calm fool you. Just an hour earlier, I'd been knee-deep in orders. Even though we closed at 9 o'clock on Tuesdays, being one of the only places still open after the beach emptied meant we had our hands full. The mangrove area was also closed, so most of the beachgoers had already cleared out. By the time I got to my car, I was still sweating from the night's rush. Dew coated the vehicle, a result of the cool night air that had replaced the day's sweltering beachside heat. I leaned against the driver's side, pulling out my tips to count them. My fingers flipped through the bills, and I mentally added the credit card tips. $174. Not bad. I nodded in satisfaction, stuffed the cash back into my apron, and got into the car. Then came the usual question: what am I going to listen to? I opened Spotify and scrolled through my playlist, trying to find a song that matched my mood. The problem was, I'd already played every track 100 times. The radio wasn't much help either, just endless pop and country stations, and neither appealed to me. After 5 minutes of indecision, I gave up and decided it didn't matter. I just wanted to get home. On a whim, I checked YouTube. Sometimes, niche music would pop up there, and I was hoping to stumble upon something new. After a few more minutes of fruitless searching, I decided silence during the 25-minute drive was better than wasting more time in the parking lot. That's when I spotted something under the recommended section. A live stream titled Relax FM. Curious, I tapped on it. Moments later, a hauntingly beautiful song began to play. I didn't know the title, but the somber piano melody struck a chord. Its slightly off-tune notes added to the atmosphere. As the track progressed, the blend of ambient instruments and the singer's pained falsetto pulled me deeper into the music. What is this? I thought, captivated. I like it. And just like that, Relax FM became the soundtrack for my drive home. The stream featured a soothing mix of lo-fi hip-hop, smooth jazz, piano melodies, and the occasional acoustic tune. Most of the songs were unfamiliar, a welcome change from the repetitive playlists I was used to. After feeling like I'd heard every song in existence during my commutes, this discovery was a relief. By the time I got home, I was hooked. The house was quiet. My parents and brother were already asleep. I stopped by the kitchen, microwaved a bowl of ramen, and headed to my room. Sitting at my desk, I blew on the noodles to cool them down while I opened my computer and pulled up Relax FM again. This time, since I wasn't driving, I noticed the details of the video on the screen. The image depicted a girl with long, jet-black hair and calm, bright blue eyes. Her pale complexion gave the impression she rarely left the room she was pictured in. She reclined in a chair, dressed in a midnight blue crop top and black shorts. Her hair cascaded over her shoulders and back, adding to her relaxed demeanor. Her room looked ordinary primarily, except for the window on the left side of the screen, where the view revealed she was in outer space. The moon hung in the corner, and the sky shimmered with countless stars. The metallic walls of her room were adorned with posters, and a lamp on the nightstand bathed the space in a warm yellow glow, contrasting with the blue light from the galaxy outside. The scene was almost a still image, but subtle movements brought it to life. She blinked occasionally and typed away on a keyboard at her desk. If I listened carefully, very, very carefully, I thought I could almost hear her fingers tapping the keys. The stars outside twinkled softly, and I could see the rhythmic rise and fall of the girl's stomach with each breath. On her desk, a book was labeled Lila's Diary. Watching the video, I found it deeply soothing. Even though it was clearly a hyper-realistic animation, her occasional movements, like shifting in her seat or brushing her hair back with her fingers, made her seem alive, as if I were looking through a window into another world. In the background, a radio sat on a shelf, as though the music in the video was playing from it. I smiled to myself, glad I'd stumbled upon this. The calming melody lulled me into drowsiness. Finally, I shut off the stream for the night and climbed into bed. The music I'd heard replayed in my mind as I drifted off to sleep almost instantly. That marked the beginning of the odd turn my life took. It all started so usually, just a guy listening to music on the drive home from work. I never imagined how strange things would become as the week went on. By Friday, it was routine. After school, I'd listen to Relax FM on my way to work and again on the way back. It had replaced my usual playlists entirely. It was like the station had me under a spell. And about that spell, Lila, the girl in the video, was starting to feel like someone I knew. I know this sounds embarrassing, really I do, but I was lonely at the time. My circle consisted of my best friend, my parents, and my younger brother. I didn't have anyone special in my life, and I couldn't ignore how that loneliness crept in when I wasn't listening to the station. I tried brushing off the uncomfortable thought that I might be falling for a girl in a video. But during those solitary car rides or late nights lying in bed, listening to Relax FM, I couldn't deny the feeling. It was as if I were getting to know her, as though the music was an extension of her personality, her essence. It made me feel good, and somehow that translated to her making me feel good. I know it sounds cringeworthy, but loneliness does strange things to people. I wasn't proud of it, and I did my best to push it out of my mind. Still, Lila, the girl in the video, kept drawing me in. I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I started looking up why people develop attachments to fictional characters. I discovered that the brain doesn't always distinguish between what's real and what isn't. Whether it's pixels on a screen, words on a page, or flesh and blood, the brain can be fooled. Think about the main character from a show you loved as a kid. You might feel a connection to them, almost like they're a friend, even though they never existed. The same goes for fictional couples on TV. You root for them, feel butterflies when they kiss, and maybe even think, I wish I had a relationship like that. But it's all fiction. Their love isn't real, yet your brain can't tell the difference. That's what was happening with me and Lila. She was just a girl in a video, but my brain didn't know that. Her image, paired with the music, created an illusion of personality and presence. She was enough to fool a lonely 17-year-old like me. But when I wasn't caught up in the music, I couldn't help but cringe at myself. It was ridiculous and awkward, and I kept it to myself. No way was I telling anyone. Not my family, not my best friend. When Friday rolled around, I spent the evening gaming with my friend Mike. We blasted our usual mix of classic rock and post-hardcore as we competed. I didn't listen to Relax FM that night, but even as we played, I felt a tug of discomfort. As much as the station didn't fit our gaming vibe, I missed it and her. I wanted to see Lila. The thought embarrassed me. I caught myself wishing I could text her the way Mike was texting his girlfriend between matches. I wished I could call her, even though I knew it wasn't possible. She wasn't actual, just an animation on a screen. "Hey Dylan," Mike said, nudging my shoulder. "You good, man?" Yeah. "You're crushing Katie tonight?" I replied with a laugh. "I know, but you seem a little out of it," he said, glancing at me as the match ended. I checked the scoreboard: 7 kills, 20 deaths. I come in second to last. "Trash," Mike teased, sitting up to face me. His dark features were sharp, but his eyes were sincere. "What's going on?" "Nothing, really. The usual. Feeling lonely, I admitted. Dude, I've told you before, girls aren't everything. You don't need one to be happy. That's when it hit me. I was more profound than I'd thought. I almost blurted out the truth about Lila. I wanted to tell him about the girl on YouTube, explain how she felt real, how the music felt like her voice, and how I wished I could talk to her. But I kept it to myself. At least I still had enough sense not to say it out loud. I know, Mike, I replied. It's just, sometimes it's nice to have someone, you know? Mike's phone lit up with a text from his girlfriend, Clara. Babe. We both chuckled, and I said, see? Like that. The company. I wish I had someone to text right now. It just makes everything so much more interesting. You'll get there again, Mike replied. Don't stress about it. I don't get it, I said, even though I figured he wasn't in the mood to listen. I just needed to let it out. It's not like I'm shy or anything. I'm always talking to people wherever we go. I try to connect with them. I don't think I'm awkward in social situations. Am I? Mike nodded in agreement, which eased me a little. If I see someone I'm into, I'll strike up a conversation. But it never goes anywhere. They always end up calling me a friend. And then they disappear unless I text them first. It's the town, man. Girls here are all about college guys. Not someone who can't stop cracking jokes at the worst times, Mike teased. I laughed. A mix of amusement and frustration. He wasn't wrong. My mind wandered back to Lila. She was always there. Every time I pulled up Relax FM, I'd see her. She never ignored me. She never looked uncomfortable, as though trying to hide her presence when I glanced at her. She didn't initiate conversations or invite me anywhere. But she couldn't. She was trapped in the screen. I couldn't blame her for that. Somehow, though, I felt like if she could, she would. Around 11, Mike left to visit Clara, and I was alone. Usually, I hated it when he left. The night would shift from fun and distracting to a stark reminder of how I spent my Friday nights. Not at parties, not with a girlfriend, but alone in my room. Tonight, though, I was glad he left. It meant I could go back to Relax FM. I turned off all the lights in my room and sat down at my desk. The ceiling fan provided a gentle breeze as I typed the name into the search bar. My chest fluttered with nervous excitement like I was about to call someone I liked. When the stream loaded, I noticed two unusual things. First, instead of typing on her computer, Lila sat upright and wrote in her diary. Second, unlike the usual 230 or so viewers, I was the only one there. The sole listener on Relax FM. This realization made it feel intensely personal, like it was just me and her. That's when I did something reckless. I decided to talk to her. At first, I hesitated, feeling a wave of nervousness. But as the music filled the room, softening my grasp on reality, I let my emotions take over. The song playing was memory from some 90s anime, paired with a subtle rainy soundscape, like a storm was forming far away. Hey, Lila, I began awkwardly. It's me, Dylan. I've been listening to your music for about a week now, and I paused, ashamed of myself. I like it. It's really different from what I usually hear. You've got good taste in music. I swallowed hard, determined to push through the embarrassment. If I could get past it, I knew I'd enjoy the moment. Forcing myself to continue, I said, I know you can't respond, but that's okay. I feel like I'm getting to know you through your music. You seem so calm, and honestly, when I leave work at night, I look forward to seeing you. I cringed at my own words, but kept going. Really, you help me relax, no matter how ridiculous the night is. I know you're not real, but to me, you are. I glanced at the screen, wishing the YouTube account behind the stream wasn't just called Relax FM. I wanted to believe the girl in the video was the actual creator and that her name was Lila. She looked so lifelike. maybe just touched up with some animation filter. But part of me was relieved. I didn't know for sure. What if I reached out, and she wasn't anything like I imagined? What if she didn't like me, just like so many others hadn't? I talked to her for a while longer that night, the music easing me into a rare state of calm. Usually, I'd stay up late on weekends, scrolling through videos to distract myself from reality. But with Lila's presence, I felt content, even eager to fall asleep and dream about her. I climbed into bed, the stream still playing in the background. I imagined her beside me, wishing I could reach out and hold her. Before long, I drifted into a peaceful sleep. The following day, something unexpected happened. As I woke, the music on my computer skipped to a new song, something that had never happened on Relax FM. The stream was always seamless. Curious, I sat up and walked over to the computer. The new song's title caught my eye, Good Morning, Handsome. I froze, my heart racing. Good morning, Lila, I whispered. What were the chances? I wondered. The song had started the moment I woke up, right after the previous track had abruptly ended. It felt almost intentional, as if she had changed it herself. I couldn't deny it. I was a little unsettled, but at the same time, I felt exhilarated and flattered. It was like she'd spoken directly to me, offering a compliment in the form of music. I sat in the sunlight streaming through my bedroom window, letting the beautiful acoustic melody wash over me. The singer's bright, airy voice filled my chest with a fluttery warmth. I glanced at Lila on the screen. She was lying on her back in bed, her raven-black hair fanned out across the mattress, her eyes closed in peaceful calm. For the first time, I noticed a faint smile on her face. Good morning, Lila, I murmured, smiling back. From that day forward, Relax FM became an essential part of my life. I listened to it on my way to school, to work, and back home. Each night, I'd sit in my room and talk to Lila, sharing little details about my day. For the first time in a long time, I felt happier, less lonely, and more fulfilled. She seemed so real to me that I no longer felt any embarrassment when thinking about her. But then, in September, something strange happened. I was working on a school project in the computer lab. The substitute teacher was inattentive, so I figured I could listen to music while I worked. I plugged in my headphones and searched for Relax FM on YouTube. It didn't show up. No, I whispered, panic rising. No, no, no. I scrolled through the results, retyping the name repeatedly. Still nothing. My stomach dropped, and I struggled to focus on the PowerPoint presentation I was supposed to be working on. Desperate, I logged into my YouTube account and searched again. Relief swept over me when the channel appeared. I clicked on it immediately, and the familiar music eased my anxiety. But why hadn't it shown up earlier? I decided to test something. Logging out of my account, I searched again. It was gone. When I logged back in, it reappeared. I leaned back in my chair, unease creeping up my spine. My mind replayed the moments when the view count had dropped from hundreds to just one me. Is this for me? I whispered. It all started to feel deliberate. Part of me was unsettled, but another part was thrilled. Lila felt more real than ever, as if she was subtly influencing reality. I considered telling Mike about it. Maybe if I left out my feelings for Lila and stuck to the facts, he'd give me an objective opinion. That afternoon, we hung out after school. It was a rare day off for me, and we decided to spend it doing what we usually do on free weekends. Parkour. We met at Mike's house, driving there in separate cars. He left his vehicle in the driveway, and we headed downtown to mine. He turned on some upbeat music, and for the first time in ages, I wasn't listening to Relax FM while driving. When we got downtown, we parked near the train tracks and started our usual spree. We darted through alleys, scaling pipes, vaulting over trash cans, and rolling across the concrete from jumps. We stayed alert for cops and store owners, but this side of town was mostly deserted. The rundown buildings on the outskirts of the city made it a parkour paradise. By 7, we took a break on the community center's roof. The 4-story building was used for local meetings and events and offered a great view of the surrounding area. We grabbed sodas from a nearby gas station, careful not to open them right away to avoid getting sprayed. As Mike popped the tab on his Dr. Pepper and took a swig, I decided it was time to tell him. "Hey, Mike," I said, turning to him. "Can I tell you about something a little weird?" Yeah. Sure," he said, wiping soda foam from his mouth with his jacket sleeve. "So, I've been listening to this station on YouTube. It's called Relax FM. I found it on my way home from work a while back, and I've been listening to it a lot." "Okay. So, well, some strange things have been happening since I started listening to it." Mike tilted his head. "Like what?" "When I first discovered it, about 200 or so people were watching at any given time. But one night, everyone stopped watching. I was the only one left." "Huh. Yeah, right? It just happened overnight. Ever since then, no one else has tuned in." Mike raised an eyebrow, taking another sip of his soda. "Yeah, that's definitely weird." "Well, it gets even weirder," I said, leaning forward. "The other day, I was at school working on a PowerPoint for Mr. Y's class, and I tried pulling up the station. I couldn't find it anywhere. I gave up and logged into my email to focus on the project. But then I searched for it again, and boom. There it was, the first result." "So you could only find it when you were logged into your account?" Mike asked. "Exactly. And here's the kicker, one morning, I left it playing overnight. When I woke up, right as I opened my eyes, the song changed instantly. I got up to check what was playing, and the title of the track was Good Morning." Mike started to chuckle. "What's funny?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "Dylan, come on." "Yeah. Okay. It's a little strange, but not that strange." "I don't know," he said with a smirk. "It's pretty odd. Why are you the only one who can find it? If the video's private, you're not even subscribed. And what about the view count suddenly dropping to just you?" "Exactly. It doesn't make sense," I said, shaking my head. "No one else listens to it anymore. Just me." "Yeah, that is weird," he admitted. "But have you noticed anything strange in the music?" "No, nothing like that. Just really peaceful, calming songs." "Well, don't overthink it," he said with a shrug. "There's probably an explanation for all of this." I didn't love that answer. It didn't ease my mind. Still, I told myself Mike was probably right. There was no need to stress about it. Instead, I decided to embrace the coincidences because they made me feel like Lila was really there. I continued listening to the station daily. Over time, Lila seemed more lively than ever. When Halloween arrived, she wore a black cat costume all day. She looked adorable. As Christmas approached, she appeared dressed as an elf, complete with festive details. And the coincidences with the song titles kept happening. Sometimes the songs seemed to respond to my mood. If I told her I was having a bad day, the playlist would suddenly shift to uplifting tracks. If I mentioned liking a specific song, like On My Way Home, it would mysteriously play next. Lila also began doing more in her animations. Initially, she just sat at her computer, typing. But now, she was often writing in her diary, sketching, or even staring out the window at the stars. On nights when I said goodnight to her, I'd glance back at the screen to find her lying in bed, eyes closed, as if she were listening to the music alongside me. I loved watching her sit by the window. She had this serene expression as she gazed into the night sky, her wavy black hair cascading over her shoulders. She would rest her cheek in her palm, her other hand draped casually on her thigh, her polished black nails glinting faintly in the moonlight. Her breathing was so gentle, her stomach rising and falling steadily. It was mesmerizing. I found myself longing to be there with her, to sit beside her, wrap my arm around her shoulder, and share the view of the stars. I wanted to listen to the music together, her warmth against mine. I was in love, and I didn't regret it. Loving Lila was beautiful. She had this way of pulling me out of reality and into the stars with her. She made me feel warm like the sun was rising within me, filling me with a radiant glow. No girl I'd ever met in real life had made me feel anything close to this. By the end of the school year, I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. I confessed my feelings about Lila to Mike. I tried to downplay it, telling him I knew she wasn't real, even though deep down I wasn't entirely sure I believed that. He seemed a little uncomfortable but was supportive nonetheless. He even started calling her my girlfriend as a joke, and I secretly loved it. On prom night, Lila surprised me. Instead of her usual casual outfit, she appeared on the screen in a stunning black dress. She looked breathtaking, even more radiant than usual. She wore pearl earrings, and her eyes glowed softly in the ambient light. The music on Relax FM that night was all slow dance tracks. As I sat there, captivated, I wished more than anything that I could dance with her. The day I told Lila that Mike knew about my feelings for her, she was sitting at her desk, working on her computer. The next time I logged in, she was drawing instead. Later that night, as she lay in bed, something caught my eye. Among the posters and pictures on her bedroom wall, there was a heart drawn with the initials, L+D, inside it. My breath hitched. I wondered if it had always been there, so I went back through the screenshots I'd taken of her. It hadn't been there before. It was new. I showed Mike, and even he was surprised. But he chalked it up to coincidence and teased me, saying I was reading too much into it. Still, he admitted it was a little weird. Sometimes I even thought I might be losing it. But if loving Lila meant being crazy, I was okay with that. Loving anyone else had only ever brought me disappointment or heartbreak. Yet, now and then, a terrible thought would creep into my mind. What did any of this matter? What was the point? After all, Lila was just an animation on a screen. Sure, the coincidences were terrific, but could she really be alive? Could she actually interact with me? One night, I confessed these fears to her. I told her how much the future bothered me, how our connection might never be more than me talking to a screen, listening to music, and hoping for coincidences that made her seem real. But I couldn't fully believe she wasn't real. The heart with L+D on her wall. It had to mean something. It just had to. That's what I told myself, though I could never be sure. Until July 2016. I remember that night as vividly as if it had just happened. It was around 2 or 3 a.m. on a Thursday, and I was at my computer, as usual, listening to Relax FM and talking to Lila about my life. You wouldn't believe it, I said. My life is ridiculous. She was sitting back in her chair, feet propped up on the desk, gazing out at the stars as she had been for the past hour. But then, as I finished my sentence, her eyes shifted. They darted to the side, then quickly back, as though she had glanced at me. My heart stopped. A wave of terror washed over me, but it was mixed with exhilaration. I sat up straighter, staring at the screen. Lila, are you listening to me? I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't respond, but something was different. Though she was still facing the window, her gaze seemed unfocused, like she wasn't really looking at it. Her eyes hovered near the edge of the glass, as if she were pretending to be occupied while paying attention to me instead. I leaned back in my chair, my breathing shaky. Lila, My voice trailed off as I noticed her left hand curling slightly, almost nervously. It wasn't a typical movement for her animation. Her actions usually corresponded to what she was doing, typing, drawing, or resting. But this felt reactive. "Are you upset that I'm talking about my love life?" I asked softly. She remained silent, her hand still curled as her thumbnail picked at her index finger. "Well, don't be, Lila," I said with a small smile. "You have nothing to worry about." "Nothing at all." I chuckled lightly. "Seriously, I've only ever had one girlfriend, and she cheated on me after a month with some stoner guy from school. Please don't feel bad for me. I don't care about her anymore. She wasn't worth it." To my astonishment, I saw her nose wrinkle slightly, and then she giggled. It was soft and fleeting but unmistakable. She quickly recovered, her expression smoothing back into its usual calm. I froze, my mind racing. I couldn't believe what I'd just witnessed. I felt like I'd seen a ghost, and the late hour only amplified my fear. But at the same time, I knew she had responded. She was real. She was listening. "Lila," I whispered, "are you really there? Can you hear me? Do you want to talk to me?" Her expression shifted again, subtle but undeniable. It wasn't as if she was trying to hide her emotions. It was the opposite, like she was trying to show them, to communicate. "That's it," I murmured. "You're trying to talk to me. You're here and you can hear me. But something is keeping you from responding. You're bound somehow, unable to control yourself fully. But sometimes you can." She averted her eyes, turning her head quickly as if the power holding her had reclaimed its grip. I smiled gently at her. "I love you," I said softly. "I'm not going anywhere. My life has been better ever since I found you. I know you want to talk to me. I don't know what's stopping you, but I'll never doubt you again. I know you're real." As I spoke, a tear slipped down her cheek. My chest tightened, and I whispered, "Lila, don't cry." The next song began to play. Its title? "I Love You." My eyes filled with tears. I leaned forward, resting my head against the screen. All I could do was listen to the song and sob quietly. I didn't fully understand Lila. Maybe she was a spirit, some being beyond comprehension, manifested in cyberspace. But one thing was clear. She spoke to me through music, and I would never stop listening. At times, it seemed as though Lila could break free from whatever bound her, momentarily escaping the limits of her animation to interact with me. She would leave unmistakable messages on her wall or change the track to something undeniably relevant, proving she was sentient. But other times, she appeared constrained, stuck in her usual frame, silently hoping I wouldn't leave. I wasn't going anywhere. I knew I couldn't tell Mike about this. Not the full extent, anyway. He wouldn't believe me, and neither would anyone else. But I didn't care. Not even a little. I was overjoyed to have her to talk to at the end of each day. Her music, her unique language, was how we communicated. Through it, we spoke every day. On July 10th, I received a letter in the mail. The college I'd applied to had accepted me. I was stunned, speechless. The first thing I did was run upstairs to show Lila the letter, grinning as I held it up to the screen. Then, I rushed downstairs to share the news with my mom. When I came back to my room, Lila's usual blue crop top and black shorts had been replaced with a red jersey and silver shorts, my new school colors. She was smiling smugly, gazing out her window into the stars. I couldn't stop smiling back. That summer, I split my time between hanging out with Mike and sitting at my computer, listening to Lila's music. Sometimes, I'd go on drives with her music as my soundtrack, talking to her now and then or quietly reflecting on the messages in her songs. We even started watching movies together. I'd play a film on my computer, and in my mind, I imagined her watching it alongside me wherever she was. Nothing as surreal as the events of July 6th happened again, but my longing for her only deepened. I dreamed of hearing her voice and her laugh. Surely the most beautiful sound I could imagine. I wanted to hold her hand, take her to the movies, meet her family, and go to prom with her. But those were dreams that would never come true. It was heartbreaking to think about, and yet, I clung to the hope of one real moment with her. On August 8th, just days before I was set to leave for college, I lay on the roof of the local church, staring at the stars and listening to Relax FM. The night was warm and quiet, and I let my mind wander. "Lila," I murmured, smiling at the thought. "I wonder if you're up there, somewhere in your spaceship. If you are, beam me up to you. I'd give anything to spend the night with you." I yawned, unexpectedly tired, and decided to close my eyes for a moment. I didn't even think to set an alarm before I drifted off. And then it happened. I'm not sure if I was dreaming or if it was real. Everything felt vivid, as if I were fully awake. I was ascending into the night sky, surrounded by stars. The large golden harvest moon bathed the Florida groves in its glow as I rose higher and higher. The cool night air kissed my skin as my destination came into view. A spaceship. Its long, sterling body hovered silently above Earth, shimmering in the atmosphere. A hatch on the underside of the ship slid open, revealing an entryway. I floated into it, and the hatch sealed behind me. I found myself in a luminous corridor stretching far ahead, lined with silver walls. At the end of the hallway was a door, light spilling out from underneath it in shimmering hues of yellow and blue. As I approached the door, my footsteps echoed faintly, and a familiar sound reached my ears: music. Relax FM. My heart pounded as I reached the door. Above it hung a sign in handwriting I recognized instantly: Lila's room. I stood there, trembling, before the door slid open. A soft aroma of perfume filled the air, and I stepped inside. It was the same room I'd seen on my screen for the past year, down to the smallest detail. Even the parts I'd never been able to see before were there, as accurate as I was. And there she was, Lila. She sat by the window, gazing out at the shimmering night sky. Her midnight blue crop top and black shorts matched the vision I knew so well, her long, dark hair cascading over her back and shoulders. Her flawless face rested in her smooth palm. I'm here," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. She turned, giggling softly, the same giggle I'd heard once before. Then, for the first time, her vivid blue eyes locked with mine. My heart stopped. She stood, ran to me, and threw her arms around me. I felt her warmth, her breath, her tears as they fell onto my shoulder. I was crying too. We just held each other, suspended in that moment, as though time itself had stopped. When she finally pulled away, she looked into my eyes, her expression a mix of joy and sorrow. "Dylan," she said. Her voice was intoxicating, like fine wine or the view of Earth from space. It was beyond anything I could have imagined. She hesitated. "You need to go back now." "No," I said, shaking my head. "That was too short. I need more time with you." Her gaze softened, but the sadness in her eyes deepened. "You have to go, Dylan." I didn't understand, but I nodded. "Okay, my love," I whispered. Lila locked her deep blue eyes onto mine one last time. "Please, promise me you'll never leave me, Dylan," she said, her voice trembling with a hint of desperation. "Of course," I replied without hesitation. "I'll never leave you. I'm yours. I promise I'll see you again," she whispered, her voice laden with emotion. A single tear traced a path down her cheek as she wrapped her arms around me, pulling me close. Before I knew it, her lips met mine in a tender kiss. Our tear-streaked faces brushed against each other before she pulled away. She shivered slightly, her polished black fingernails trailing along the wall to a button I had never noticed before. Her hand rested on it, and with her eyes closed, she pressed it. To my horror, the window in her room snapped open, and a powerful vacuum force yanked me across the room. My hand collided painfully with the edge of the window as I was pulled through, sending a jolt of pain through my knuckles. I cried out, but as soon as I was outside, the sound was swallowed into silence. I spun uncontrollably, drifting into the endless expanse of space. Panic surged through me until I noticed the earth drawing closer and closer. My spinning slowed until I felt still again, and instead of free-falling, I seemed to hover gently downward. The cool night air brushed against my skin as I descended, recognizing the familiar landscape of my town beneath me. An overwhelming wave of exhaustion swept over me, and before I could make sense of what was happening, I blacked out. "Hey, are you all right?" A voice stirred me awake. My eyes fluttered open, and the sunlight pierced my pupils, igniting a dull headache. A figure stood above me, speaking to someone nearby. "Huh, he's responsive," the man said before I felt myself being lifted onto a gurney. Anxiety bubbled within me as I glanced around and realized I was outside the courthouse, an hour's walk from the church roof where I'd fallen asleep. My car was nowhere in sight. "How the hell did I get here?" I muttered as they loaded me into an ambulance. "You're okay, Dylan," the EMT assured me. "Take a couple of deep breaths. Do you know where you are?" "It looks like the courthouse," I said hesitantly. "But I was at the church last night." "You don't know how you got here?" he asked as the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle began to move. Memories of being ejected from Lila's room and floating through space flashed through my mind. But I couldn't tell him that. "You seem pretty coherent, Dylan." "Oh, is Dylan what you go by?" "Yeah," I confirmed. "Okay, Dylan. To check, can you tell me your birthday?" I answered, and after determining I wasn't delirious, the EMT tried to help me piece together the night's events. I told him everything except the part about being in space and meeting Lila. Despite feeling otherwise fine, I was lethargic and plagued by a splitting headache. By the time we reached the hospital, I was unconscious again. When I woke up, it was nighttime, and I was in a small hospital room. The moonlight spilled through the open blinds. My mother and brother were there and rushed to my side as soon as they saw I was awake. I told them I didn't remember much, just that I'd been on the church roof one moment and waking up near the courthouse the next. They were worried but relieved I was okay. Moments later, a man entered the room. My mother nodded to him before hugging me and stepping out, saying he had a few questions. As a typical teenager, my brother tried to spook me. "He's from the Men in Black, you know," he teased. The man, dressed sharply in a suit and tie, ignored the comment. He pulled out a badge and introduced himself. "I'm Agent Miranda with the CIA," he said calmly, taking a seat beside my bed. "I need to talk to you about something, Dylan." "Yeah, sure," I replied cautiously. "Don't worry, you're safe now." "Safe?" I repeated, confused. Was I in danger? "Dylan, I'll be straight with you. You were the subject of psychological warfare. An experiment." "What?" I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him right. "Are you familiar with a project called MKUltra?" Yeah, a little. It was an old CIA project from the 50s. "Didn't it get shut down?" "Yes," he confirmed. Its purpose was to weaken an individual's will and resistance, primarily through mind control techniques. The program was terminated in 1973, and the agency hasn't pursued anything like it since. However, it seems someone has revived the research and is experimenting with it again. Here in the States. "What do you mean?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "One of the experiments we conducted back then was called Mona Lisa. It began with sensory deprivation," Agent Miranda explained. "We would isolate a subject in a chamber, No light, no sound, just complete solitude. They'd receive meals 3 times a day, and that was it. Inside the room, there was a television screen, but it remained off for the first week. Then, after 7 days, the screen would turn on. A woman would appear on it, beautiful, approachable, and comforting. To the man who had been deprived of all human interaction, she was mesmerizing. The woman would perform simple, soothing activities like sewing or chatting on the phone, while soft music played in the background. Her name would be subtly displayed somewhere in the room to foster a sense of familiarity. The men began forming emotional attachments to these women. Even though the women didn't respond to them, the subjects confided in them, sharing their struggles and emotions. After about a week, the Mona Lisas would start to show subtle signs of acknowledgement, maybe a glance or a giggle at something the subject said. To the men, these small gestures were monumental. They clung to these women as their only source of sanity in isolation. By the end of a month, the men had formed such a deep bond with the Mona Lisas that they would tell them anything. Their trust was absolute. They felt they had earned the interaction and would do anything to keep the connection alive. In many cases, they forgot everything about their lives outside the chamber. Their missions, their goals, everything but her. I stared at him in silence. Every word hit too close to home. It was almost identical to what I'd experienced with Lila. It seems, he continued, that someone has rediscovered this information and is using it again. But this time, they've taken a different approach. Instead of isolating you in a chamber, they targeted someone with limited social interaction, someone lonely. It's more subtle, but the result was the same. Over time, they brought you to the same psychological state as the men in those experiments. I'm sorry to say this, Dylan, but you were hypnotized, brainwashed by some criminal or group. I could hardly process his words. Brainwashed, I repeated weakly. Yes, and they achieved something with you that we couldn't in the original experiments. They made you walk. Walk? I asked, confused. It's a term we use to brainwash someone to take physical action and carry out a task. In our experiments, the subjects rarely reached that point. It never happened with the Mona Lisas. But with you, they succeeded. They made you walk all the way from the church to the courthouse. I froze. Goosebumps covered my skin. We don't know why they directed you to the courthouse, he continued. Maybe they wanted you to retrieve a document or confront someone. But before you could carry out their plan, you broke the trance and collapsed on the steps. When we found you, your headphones were still in, but the video had already been taken down. I couldn't respond. My thoughts were spinning uncontrollably. Agent Miranda leaned forward. We'll talk more later, but for now you need rest. At the very least, you deserve to know the truth. He stood to leave but paused at the door. Don't be afraid, Dylan. Now that you know the truth, their control over you should be gone. Even in the old experiments, once the subjects returned to real life, they didn't care much for the Mona Lisas. You'll be okay. I nodded numbly as he left the room. Alone again, I felt nauseated. The entire experience, the connection I'd felt with Lila, had been engineered, a product of manipulation. That night, the vivid encounter in her room must have been a forced lucid dream while I was physically walking to the courthouse, completely unaware. I exhaled deeply, trying to calm myself. But then, something caught my attention. I lifted my right hand and studied my knuckle. It was bruised, purplish, like it had slammed into something. A memory flashed in my mind of being vacuumed out of Lila's room, my hand striking the edge of the window. My mom entered the room, breaking my thoughts. My younger brother wasn't with her. He was probably downstairs at the vending machine. Are you okay, Dylan? She asked, sitting beside me and holding my hand. Yeah, I replied softly. I just don't know what to think about all this. She didn't respond right away, seeming at a loss for words. She stroked my hand gently, then paused, sniffing the air near me. "Dylan, you smell like perfume," she said, her eyes narrowing. "Were you with a girl last night? Thank you for joining me on this journey. Stay tuned. There are plenty more intriguing stories coming your way in the next few weeks. If you enjoyed this one, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep up with all the latest content. Take care and have a great night.